July has arrived and the 2025 Pokemon season has officially started, and while some players are gearing up to start earning championship points at their League Cups and League Challenges, others are preparing for the 2025 World Championships. However, today's video will take us through a different journey, one filled with familiar faces and amazing combos, with a card pool going back to cards released in 2011, grey colored ace-specs, and a plethora of incredible combos that will make you question why these cards are even allowed to be played together in the first place. Expanded is an alternative to the standard format, which includes all the cards printed since Black and White, except for a ban list that currently includes 24 cards. Most cards on the ban list are there to prevent decks that could lock the opponent out of the game, or even win the game outright on the very first turn of the game. Expanded used to be an official format just like Standard and was played in about 40% of North American regionals, and local tournament organizers could choose to run their League Cups and League Challenges in either Standard or Expanded. Despite enjoying some popularity during the lockdown era of online events, Expanded seems to have been phased out of the competitive scene since the return of in-person play, especially since, unlike its predecessor TCG Online, TCG Live doesn't support the real Expanded format. In Japan though, Expanded remains a popular format. It is used in one Champions League, the Japanese equivalent of regionals, each season, and in local events. Once a year, some Expanded staples are reprinted with a special stamp and given out in tournaments called Extra Battle Day, ensuring that old cards remain accessible to newer players. Expanded includes cards as old as 2011 from the original Black and White set. Despite that, getting into the format is much easier than you think. Many top tier decks in the format are built around modern powerhouses like Lugia VSTAR or Charizard EX, cards that standard players are very likely to own. However, these decks can look very different from their standard incarnations because they use many older staple cards. An example of these includes cards such as VS Seeker, which is one of the most ubiquitous trainer cards in the format. This card changes the way that supporter lines are built. Instead of having to play 3 or 4 copies of your important supporters, you can just play 1 copy of each, and 3 or 4 Versus Seeker to get easy access to whichever supporter you need on any given turn. This is facilitated thanks to Battle Compressor, which discards cards up to 3 from your deck. This card has incredible synergy with every deck that uses the discard as a resource. Remember how Lugia used to play Professor Burnett to discard 2 Archeops? Battle Compressor can discard 2 and a supporter, and it's an item. We can also use it to discard Psychic Energy in Gardevoir EX, or Pokemon in United Wings, and so on. Decks that use Battle Compressor and VS Seeker tend to draw through their deck quite fast, thanks to support Pokemon like the Den AGX and Crobat V, and item cards such as Quick Ball and Trainer's Mail. Although expanded trainer cards allow a player to draw through their entire deck in one turn in theory, that's often a bad idea, and many cards that see a lot of play are less flashy. For example, Floatstone might not look incredible, but it's a much better card than Switch, not only allowing the active Pokemon to retreat, but also creating a pivot Pokemon for the rest of the game. It works perfectly with Guzma, which is a better boss's orders as long as you have a free retreat Pokemon in play. Similarly, Field Blower is a better Lost Vacuum, removing up to 2 Tool and Stadium cards in play. It would also be impossible to make a list of impactful cards without mentioning N, one of the best supporters in the history of the game. N is very similar to Iono, but it's often better to make the opponent shuffle their hand in their deck so they have no control over what they're going to draw. One common misconception is that Expanded is full of decks that win on the first or second turn of the game. In reality, the ban list ensures that decks that leave no chance to their opponent to play the game are not allowed. There are still decks that can ensure a very quick win using a very aggressive draw engine, but the faster the deck, the more weaknesses it has. For example, the popular Electrode Rain deck aims to go second, use Gengar and Mimikyu GX and or Whismur to buy a turn or 2, then use Electro GX to charge up Alolan Raichu with multiple reversal and counter energy in order to take 6 prizes in one turn, using a very aggressive draw engine. This strategy is devastating if you don't expect it, but there are many ways to counter it, such as Sudowoodo to limit the Alolan Raichu's bench, or even a single bench barrier Pokemon such as Manaphy or Mew. More generally, decks that rely too much on draw Pokemon like the Den AGX and Squawkabilly EX will have trouble with Wobbuffet, a popular Pokemon in slower decks. Decks that discard resources too recklessly can be in trouble if their key supporters are sent to a lost zone by Girafarig. Decks full of basic Pokemon can have trouble with Silent Lab or Alolan Mach, and so on. Thanks to this kind of disruptive cards, aggressive decks are kept in check. In fact, historically, the best archetypes in Expanded tend to be moderate decks, which have both aggressive and disruption options. Not every Pokemon is competitively viable in Expanded, of course, but thanks to the card pool, it's possible to find unique combinations which allow some cards that never saw play in Standard to shine. Pokemon such as Darkrai VSTAR, Volcarona V, Palafin EX, Serena V, or even Wobbuffet Break, for example, have all found more use in Expanded than in Standard. If you have a favorite card that you really want to make work, maybe you can find new ways to play it in Expanded. The metagame is surprisingly diverse. Basic, Stage 2, VMAX, Aggro, Lock, Spread, V-Star, Stall, Mill, many styles of play are viable. This is partly because players have few incentives to really solve the format due to the lack of high stakes events, but also because Expanded is so wide that often an obscure deck or strategy turns out to be a great counter to popular decks. Now, let's take a look at some of the popular or viable decks in the format that include both familiar faces in Standard, but also cards that you likely haven't heard of before. If you have enjoyed the video so far and found the information useful, please consider becoming a tablemon channel member through the join button down below. For as low as $1.99 a month, you can help support the creation of these videos. The first featured deck is the poster child of the format, Regidrago VSTAR. Yes, Regidrago VSTAR is currently legal in Standard, and is awaiting on Kyurem from Shrouded Fable to become a top tier deck. In Expanded, however, it's the most popular deck and one of the strongest. Why is it better in Expanded than in Standard? Well, two things. Double Dragon Energy, Dragon type attackers available, and discarding options. I guess that's 3. In Expanded, it's much easier to use Apex Dragon thanks to Double Dragon Energy, and there are some great attacks to copy. Regidrago VSTAR can 1KO anything with Mega Rayquaza EX's Dragon Ascent, and a Muscle Band, lock items with Noivern GX's Distort, and even take an extra turn with Dialga GX's Timeless GX. In Expanded, it's also much easier to send Pokemon to the discard pile between Regidrago's Legacy Star and Battle Compressor, and you can also discard supporters as you only play one copy of each and reuse them with Versus Seeker. The deck is very consistent, especially with the help of expanded staples like the Dene GX, Crobat V, Tapu Lele GX, Quick Ball, and Mysterious Treasure to help you set up and easily use the best attack for any given situation on turn 2. Regidrago can hit hard, but it can also disrupt the opponent, an important factor in Expanded. In addition to its various attacks, the deck also commonly includes Garbotoxin Garbodor, 2 lock abilities once set up, and if necessary, the lock can be started on turn 1 by bringing Wobbuffet active. So, how do you beat a deck that can do everything? Well, the answer is Girafarig. This card has become a very common tech in the format as it can send key Pokemon and supporters to the Lost Zone. It can't be overstated how much Girafarig can punish careless use of Battle Compressor. Also, like many expanded decks, Regidrago has a low energy count, which can be attacked in various ways. Faba is common in many decks, including Regidrago itself, to deal with Double Dragon Energy. Slower decks may play other energy denial cards as well to prevent Regidrago from attacking, such as Plumeria or Promo Jirachi. Some Regidrago players choose to run Welder to power up Regidrago in one turn, whilst others go with Raihan. Running Mega Charizard EX over or alongside Mega Rayquaza EX can also make the deck less vulnerable to energy disruption. A few lists include Dragonite to add basic energy in play and be safe against Faba. Obviously, a toolbox deck in Expanded has a wide array of options. Some possible inclusions are Dragonite from Plasma Freeze, where Devin is a better Distort, but it doesn't have a good second attack unlike Noivern GX, Ultra Necrozma for energy disruption, and Regidrago to KO big basics more easily. One last consideration is which A-Spec to use, as in Expanded there's a wider variety of A-Specs. The usual choice in Regidrago is Scoop Up Cyclone, because it can save you in case you start with Dialga GX, or to a lesser extent with a support Pokemon like the Dene GX or Crobat V. It can also heal a damaged Regidrago VSTAR, as it gets pretty tanky when using Rolling Iron, and it's also strong against decks that aim to trap a Pokemon active, like Snorlax. The second most common A-Spec for the deck is Prime Catcher, which you are probably already familiar with how strong a card it is. As a standard legal card that gets infinitely better when combined with older cards, and a deck with many options that nevertheless require smart play to not lose to some common text, Regidrago is an excellent introduction to the format. Next up is the second most popular deck in the format, Lugia VSTAR. It might not surprise you that Lugia VSTAR is one of the best decks in Expanded. Compared to Standard, it gains Battle Compressor to easily discard Archeops, Wally to evolve into Lugia VSTAR on turn 1 going second, and of course, plenty of good special energy and attackers. The best energy in Expanded is arguably Double Dragon Energy, So when it first appeared, Lugia VSTAR was paired with Pokemon that could have used it, such as Garchomp and Giratina GX, in order to use GGN GX's full effect on turn 1. Other powerful options include Naganadel and Gosler GX Chaotic Order GX, or Garchomp V's Sonic Strike. This variant, often called Dragon Lugia, was strong, but over time its weaknesses became apparent. It didn't trade well into high HP Pokemon or one prizers. Charizard EX, for example, was hard to deal with due to its high HP, and even Charmeleon is immune to GGN GX. While it's still a good deck overall, and it's possible that Dragon Lugia gets better when Kyurem releases in Shrouded Fable, it's the other variant of Lugia VSTAR which I think has more potential, Rainbow Lugia. This variant forgoes Double Dragon Energy for Multicolor Energy, and can play basically any attacker in the game. The main attackers in the deck are a duo that you'll probably recognize, Iron Hands EX and Roaring Wind EX. Just like in Standard, Ambu very much deals with low HP Pokemon such as Bunnelby, Wobbuffet or Girafarig, whilst Roaring Wind EX can take down big threats like Charizard EX, VMAX or Regidrago VSTAR. Lugia VSTAR itself can also attack and, thanks to powerful energy, it can 1KO big basics like Iron Hands EX or Gouging Fire EX, and Naganadel and Gosler GX remains in the list because Chaos Order GX is just too good as a finisher. Finally, Radiant Greninja can also target low HP Pokemon while also acting as draw power, and with special charge recovering special energy, discarding them to get extra draw power is not a big deal. The deck's usual plan to victory is to take 2 prizes each turn with any of the attacks mentioned before. The trainer line is pretty classic, with the usual Quick Ball, Ultra Ball and Battle Compressor. Field Blower can remove tools from Carveter and annoying stadiums like Path to a Peak. Iono is preferred to end in this deck, so you can put your energy back to the bottom of the deck without drawing them again. 2 copies of Wally is pretty classic. A good turn 1 move going second is to use Battle Compressor for 2 Archeops and Wally, then Versus Seeker the Wally for an early summoning star. Having a second Wally still lets you search for it with Tapu Lele GX if needed. This version of the deck runs Skyfield, so you can dig more effectively through your deck with support Pokemon, and Pseudo-Wudo so your opponent can't benefit from Skyfield. Lugia VSTAR can be disrupted by cards like Wobbuffet and Iron Thorns EX, which prevent the use of Summoning Star, so Fluttermane is used to deal with this Pokemon. Some other deck lists play Silent Lab instead, but this is a double-edged sword as it shuts down your own support Pokemon as well. Rainbow Lugia is probably the most versatile deck in the format as it's a giant toolbox, like Lost Box except you're not limited to a few energy types. Other Pokemon often used are Watch and Learn Sudowoodo, Moltres and Zapdos and Articuno GX, and the classic amazing rare pair of Yveltal and Raikou. Other options for the deck include canceling Cologne to deal with Wobbuffet and Iron Thorns EX, as well as Manaphy, Stealthy Hood to keep using Archeops under Garbotoxin, Recycle Energy, Mist Energy, Fava, and even Cassius, though Thornton generally achieves the same goal. Lugia has its weaknesses, notably Jirachi and Alolan Persian GX. It's also slightly unfavored against Regidrago VSTAR, but you can always find a way to build it to beat what you want to beat. I expect it will evolve alongside the metagame for a long time. Next, we have a deck that is sure to drive your opponents crazy, Bunnelby Lock, also known as Evolution Control in Japan, which uses Item Lock to control the game, and it recently won the Aichi Champions League tournament. Setting up Vileplume on turn 1 to Item Lock both players has been a thing for a long time, first with Forest of Giant Plants before its ban, and then with Rowlet and Alolan Executor GX. Many decks have a hard time without item cards like Versus Seeker and Battle Compressor. In order to accomplish this, Bunnelby can use Technical Machine Evolution twice thanks to Omega Barrage, evolving Oddish and Pidgey to Gloom and Pidgeotto, then to Vileplume and Pidgeot EX. The key card to do this on turn 1 is Guzma and Hala. If you open with Bunnelby, Guzma and Hala can get Artisan for Oddish, Capture Energy for Pidgey, and Technical Machine Evolution. The deck plays 4 copies of Guzma and Hala, and of Tackle to maximize the odds of the turn 1 lock. Alternatively, if you open with another Pokemon, you can instead use Buddy Buddy Puffin to grab Bunnelby and Oddish, and get Jet Energy with Guzma and Hala to bring Bunnelby active and attack with it. Bunnelby also does 2 things for the deck after turn 1. It gets back supporters and energies, which you can then grab with Pidgeot EX with Rototiller, and mills the opponent with Burrow if they're being passive. To compare to Standard, if you've played with or against Snorlax style, imagine if Chiyu EX was also the Palpad, Silene, and Team Yell's Cheer Cycle, and also the key to setting up Item Lock on turn 1, and also a 1 prizer searchable with Artisan. That's the level of role compression we're talking about. Of course, simply setting up Item Lock doesn't win you the game if your opponent is taking a KO per turn. so Bunnelby Lock needs other ways to disrupt plans. The first is energy denial. Multiple supporters in the deck can remove energy, and Jirachi can do so repeatedly, making it a key card against Lugia VSTAR. Team Flare Grunt plus Jirachi can also remove double dragon energy plus basic energy from Regidrago VSTAR in one turn. There are also two other Vileplume to cover specific situations. Vileplume from Burning Shadows walls decks full of basic Pokemon, like Miraidon EX. These decks often run too much basic energy for energy denial to be a realistic option. And Vileplume GX one-hit KOs Charizard EX, which is another top tier deck and can be clutch in other random situations since Allergic Explosion GX plus Massive Balloon over the course of 2 turns deals 280 damage thanks to paralysis to KO a Pokemon VSTAR. Since the Scarlet and Violet rule change, Pokemon tools are no longer items, so Garbotoxin can be activated under item lock. To counter this, Bunnelby Lock runs Stealthy Hood, which makes Vileplume immune to Garbotoxin, thereby maintaining the lock. Bunnelby Lock always runs Vileplume, but many lists run Gallade over Pidgeot EX, as it's unaffected by Path to a Peak, Wobbuffet and Iron Thorns EX. It also lets Bunnelby Lock run Path to a Peak itself, as additional disruption. On the other hand, Pidgeot EX can grab energy, especially basic energy, which is key in the mirror match and other controlled lock decks, as it is much harder to remove those permanently from the game. Other cards that can see play in the deck include Dusknoir, Sydney and Tool Jammer, which can be used to lock a Pokemon active, since the opponent won't be able to retreat using Floatstone. Karen can also be used as a Regidrago VSTAR counter. Moving on to the other side of the spectrum, from a control deck to a full aggro deck, we have Serena V. This card was completely absent from the standard format when it was legal, and there's a good chance you don't know what it does. So here it is in its simplicity. It deals damage by discarding your benched Pokemon. There are 2 reasons why this attack is much better in expanded than in standard. First, Skyfield lets you put up to 8 Pokemon on your bench, increasing Serena's damage output from 220 to 330, or 300 if you keep 1 benched Pokemon. Second, filling your bench is much easier. Execute and Giratina can be brought back from the discard repeatedly, and with Propagate you can pay for all your Quick Ball and Ultra Ball, whilst Giratina's Distortion Door adds damage to your opponent's bench and they synergize well with Bala Compressor. You also get to use powerful abilities of Pokemon like the Dene GX and Eldegoss V and discard them so they aren't liabilities on your bench. Then you can reuse them with Dragonite DX and Rescue Stretcher. Even though Serena V will likely get KO'd each turn, you can power up a new one in 1 turn with Raihan or Tapu Koko Prism Star so you can keep trading 1-hit KOs. These turns most matchups into a price race, but Serena has 2 aces up its sleeve, 2 ways to take extra prize cards. The first is Sky Seal Stone, which is often used since Pokemon VSTAR and VMAX such as Regidrago, Lugia, Mew and others are a big part of the metagame. The second is this combo from 2020 Standard with Jirachi Prism Star. You put Jirachi Prism Star on top of your deck with Oranguru, then swap it with a prize card with Mr. Mime. You can then take an extra prize with Wish Upon a Star. Penny theoretically even allows you to do this multiple times a game. Serena is fast, refined, and like many decks of this style, it has weaknesses to exploit. For example, it relies a lot on abilities, so it can struggle if these are turned off. Field Blower can deal with Silent Lab, Path to a Peak, and Garbodor's Garbotoxin by removing its tool, and Fluttermane can counter Wobbuffet, which must be active. But there's no easy answer to a Lowland Mock. Sudowoodo, which limits Serena's bench and therefore its damage output, is also a major issue with no good way to deal with it. Thankfully, Serena has a lot of flexibility and can consider counters to these cards if needed, at the cost of either consistency or the Jirachi Prism Star package. For example, Jolteon VMAX can KO Sudowoodo on the bench thanks to damage counters from Giratina. Amazing Raikou and Radiant Greninja with counter energy, which can also be used for Serena V itself, can also target Sudowoodo, Garbodor and other support Pokemon like Vileplume and Arceus to KO them with help from Giratina. Another option for the deck is to try to get better use out of these Giratina damage counters, for example by setting up weaker Pokemon for Medicham V's Yoga Loop. Overall, Serena V is not considered a tier 1 archetype, but it has a lot of flexibility and can definitely hold its own against the best decks. It got multiple top 32 finishes at Champions League Aichi this year and a top 4 last year in the hands of Shintaro Ito. Next up is a card you definitely have heard of if you play Standard, Charizard EX. While nowhere as dominant and expanded, it's still a relevant part of the format, and here's why. Charizard EX is good and expanded for the same reasons as in Standard. First, it has a massive 330 HP, which is enough to withstand Regidrago VSTAR copying Dragon Ascent, even with Muscle Band, or Lugia VSTAR's Tempest Dive with 4 powerful energy. Its damage output starts at 180, enough to KO many bench sitters in the format such as the AGX, Regidrago V and Tapu Lele AGX, and increases up to 330, enough to KO almost anything. Also, its dark typing is useful against powerful decks like Mew VMAX and Shadow Rider VMAX. Unlike in Standard, Charizard EX's support partner isn't Pidgeot EX, but the Inteleon line. Drizzle and Inteleon's Shady Dealings allow the player to search for trainer cards, and aren't weak to Path to a Peak. So for example, on turn 2, you can level for Drizzle, Shady Dealings to get Irida for another Drizzle and Rare Candy, and play second Drizzle for Evolution Instance for Charizard EX. It's like a much more flexible Arven. Other useful Shady Dealings targets include Counter Catcher, since as an evolution deck Charizard will often get a Pokemon KO'd before attacking, Pokemon Ranger to deal with item lock like Vigol V's Paralyzing Bolt, and Versus Seeker. Drizzle can evolve into Shady Dealings Inteleon for more trainer search, but also into Quick Shooting Inteleon. In combination with Muscle Band, it helps Charizard EX take easier KOs throughout the game. Charizard EX was at its best when Scoop of Net was in the format, allowing it to freely reuse Drizzle and Inteleon's abilities and to heal Charizard EX. Now that it's banned, Professor Churro's Scenario and Scoop of Cyclone can still fill this role. The list shown runs a few tech cards to deal with the metagame. Temple of Sinnoh is useful against Regidrago VSTAR and Lugia VSTAR, the 2 best decks around. Lysander Prism Star can loss on Regidrago's attackers or supporters so they can't be recovered with Versus Seeker. Wolfhead is also a popular card that shuts down Drizzle and Charizard EX's abilities, so Klefki is necessary to counter them. Other options to deal with it include Silent Lab and Escape Rope if there's only one Wolfhead, and Field Blower helps with Garbiter. There are multiple other cards that could fit in the deck. A cool one is Octillery, which is levelable and Irida searchable Bibarel, which has the bonus of having a Rapid Strike pre-evolution that can be searched through Sobble's Keep Calling. Bottom line, Charizard EX is a great deck for newcomers to expand it since it mostly uses recent cards. Many consider it to be the 3rd best deck around, behind Regidrago and Lugia, and it must be respected even without Scoop Up Net. Charizard EX's impact on Expanded is not negligible. It made Shadow Rider and Mew less playable, and it's one of the reasons why Lugia lists have moved away from the Double Dragon Energy build to other variants. One of the least explored but full of potential decks in Expanded, now that Twilight Masquerade is out, is Iron Thorns EX. This deck made top 4 at the Aichi Champions League. Stall decks built around ability locking Pokemon, Wolfhead and Klefki, and energy denial trainers have been around for a while, and can be very effective against parts of the meta like Regidrago VSTAR, but they often tend to struggle against other parts of the metagame, especially the number 2 deck, Lugia VSTAR. With Silent Lab and or Fluttermane, Lugia can cancel Wolfhead's ability and accelerate energy as normal with Arceus. Enter Iron Thorns EX. Its ability locks all the common support Pokemon, the AGX, Crobat V, Tapu Lele AGX, but its attack and typing also allow it to fight back and take prizes against Lugia VSTAR, the same way recent Pidgeot control decks play in Standard. Some Iron Thorns lists play no other Pokemon, but that leaves the deck with few options. The list being showcased is based on the one that got top 4 with it, but it has more options. The most obvious one is Garbiter, which puts a stronger lock in play than just initialization. With an active Iron Thorns EX and Garbiter on the bench, a Lugia player needs Silent Lab or Fluttermane and a Field Blower to activate Summoning Star. And since Iron Thorns EX actively pressures the opponent by attacking, they can't simply wait until they draw the cards. Of course, attacking manually is not a winning strategy, as energy can be removed from play with Faba, Plumeria, and Enhanced Hammer. Vikavolt V is another powerful disruptive card. Paralyzing Bolt's item lock can be countered by Pokemon Ranger, but when you combine it with Garbiter's ability lock, you make life very difficult for setup decks like Charizard EX Inteleon. Luxury V is typically used against other control decks, or when a lock is established and you want to remove your opponent's outs to it. For example, after discarding Regidrago VSTAR's energy, you can discard Raihan and Versus Seeker so you can start taking prizes. The deck's engine uses Tack Call as its engine. Guzman Hall allows for a variety of turn 1 plays, get Iron Thorns EX active and draw cards, capture energy Floatstone and Tropical Beach, evolve Trubbish with Technical Machine Evolution, assuming you already have Floatstone. You can even attack with Volt Cyclone the first turn with Double Curlless Energy and Thunder Mountain. Unlike in the Bunnelby lock deck, there's no specific 3 cards to take, it depends on the situation. Guzman Hala remains a strong card throughout the game. Tackle also has 2 other targets, Lucario Melmetal GX, which is another way to discard energy from the board, and Cynthia and Caitlyn, which draws and recovers supporters. Combined with Lusamine, Cynthia Caitlyn allows for an infinite loop. Computer Surge and Forest Seal Stone offer more consistency. Note that in Japan though, you can't use Forest Seal Stone if Garbo Toxin is active, because Garbo Toxin removes abilities from all cards in play, not all Pokemon. However, it was confirmed recently that it doesn't apply in TPCI regions. Finally, Speed Energy gives a bit more consistency to the deck as well, and even in matchups where dealing damage isn't a priority, the energy base is still useful because it helps the deck to set up. The final deck I want to talk about is probably the most unique, Electrode Rain One Turn KO, or OTK for short. This deck got second place at the Champions League Aichi and everyone was wondering how it worked. This deck aims to take 6 prizes or KO the opponent's whole board before they can play a supporter card. Electro GX's extra energy bomb attaches a bunch of reversal and counter energy to Alolan Raichu, which then uses Electrode Rain for the win. Let's say the opponent benches 3 180 HP Pokemon in the first turn. You need 18 lightning energy on Alolan Raichu to KO all 3, 6 for each. With 2 Electro GX, you can attach 4 reversal, 4 counter and 2 unit, which is 22, more than enough. In fact, thanks to telescopic sight and maybe a manual attachment, it's even doable with only 1 use of extra energy bomb. However, if there are Pokemon with more HP or a lot of high HP 1 price Pokemon, 2 Electro GX are needed. This deck always goes second. It can't actually win on turn 1 since it needs to evolve into Alolan Raichu and at least 1 but usually 2 Electro GX. But it can use Gengar and Mimikyu GX's Horror House GX to skip the opponent's second turn. Whismer's Ball Attack, which stops an opponent from playing cards on their second turn, can also buy an additional turn. It can prevent the opponent from setting up, then winning is fairly straightforward. Just draw through your deck with the DeneGX, Crobat V and Squawkabilly X thanks to the space afforded by Skyfield, while discarding energy and useless cards with Battle Compressor. Escape Word is used as a way to retreat Pokemon. It's better than Flowstone here because it allows you to discard energy attached to Gengar, Mimikyu GX or Whismer after attacking with it, so that energy can be attached to Alolan Raichu through Electro GX afterwards. As for the A-Spec, Computer Search is used as a generic consistency card. Secret Box is an alternative now that it's legal, but the cost of discarding 3 cards can be steep. Electrode Rain OTK is very strong and can beat powerful decks like Regidrago and Lugia before they can set up and do their thing. And I know you might be thinking it's unfair and broken, however, it also has a lot of weaknesses. First, Manaphy or any other bench barrier Pokemon shuts the deck down if you don't want to lose to Electrode Rain. Put Manaphy in your deck, it's as simple as that, as long as you can get it out on turn 1. Second, Sudowoodo is also a huge issue for the deck. It needs 3 bench spots for Raichu and 2 Electro GX and 1 for Gengar and Mimikyu GX. There is no space left for more than 1 support Pokemon until Electro GX is used. Finally, Wolfhead and Klefki prevent a lot of the draw abilities, and extra energy bomb in Wolfhead's case, the deck plays Escape Rope as an out to them, but it still needs to draw it without access to the Dene, Crobat or Squawk. Also, Escape Rope doesn't do anything against double Wolfhead, seen in some stall decks, Palafin, and some psychic decks like Shadow Rider or Gardevoir. Klefki can shut down Bite Barricade to use the extra energy bomb, but doesn't help with draw power, so it's a last resort. Electrode Rain is a deck you should be aware of if you play Expanded, but it doesn't ruin the format. Ryota simply made a good call in Aichi by identifying that most players wouldn't prepare for Electrode Rain and wouldn't play counters. Some Japanese players want to see Electro GX banned, which is understandable since it's only used in this type of low interaction deck, but so far it hasn't been banned yet. We'll see what happens. The card pool is so deep for this format, and with not a lot at stake, there's probably still plenty of combos and interactions to be discovered and tried out that could potentially compete with the 2 top decks in Regidrago VSTAR and Lugia VSTAR. Some example of decks that see play but weren't covered in this video are Mew VMAX, Gardevoir, Palafin, Articuno to name a few. Hopefully, this gives you a good rundown on what the expanded format looks like in 2024, which are the top decks, and surely you'll find something that fits your tastes. This video was possible thanks to 2024 NEIC finalist Stefan Ivanov, so a big thank you to him for letting me recompile all his knowledge into this video. If you'd like to learn more about Expanded, make sure to follow him on Twitter, which you can find a link for in the description in the link below, as well as a link to his Linktree where he has information on these expanded decks and more. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time. If you want to support the channel, you can use code tablemon to get 5% off at Potent Store for your online codes. 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 10% off on your aluminum accessories at TC Evolutions. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local C27 en el centro comercial Otay.